Most people spend their lives reacting. They react to problems, to pressure, to other people's decisions, to opportunities that arrived without warning. Then they wonder why they always feel behind, why things keep happening to them instead of for them. The people who consistently stay ahead are not necessarily smarter. They don't have better information. They simply learned one thing everyone else skipped. The present moment is not where the game is played. What happens next is. And once you learn to see what's next, before everyone else does, the whole landscape changes. Why most people live in reaction mode. Here's what most people never notice. Reaction feels like action. When something happens and you respond quickly, when you fire back in an argument, when you jump at an opportunity before fully thinking it through, when you make a decision under pressure because waiting felt passive, it feels like you're engaged, like you're moving, like you're doing something. But reaction is not strategy. Reaction is just the present moment pulling you forward without your full consent. Think about it. The person who texts back immediately from a place of anger. The person who takes a job offer the same day it arrives because the urgency felt like importance. The person who defends themselves before they've fully understood the accusation. The person who says yes to a commitment they haven't actually thought through because the request came from someone they didn't want to disappoint. Every one of those is a reaction, and every reaction made without deliberate thought is a decision shaped more by the moment's emotional pressure than by what you actually want. This is where people fall behind, not through dramatic mistakes, but through the slow accumulation of reactive decisions that felt right in the moment and only revealed their cost weeks or months later. The dangerous part is that reactive living becomes a habit so deep it starts to feel like personality. You start thinking of yourself as someone who responds to life as it comes, adaptable, present, and you stop noticing that most of the life you're adapting to was designed by someone else's agenda. The hidden cost of thinking one step ahead. Most people, when they do think ahead, think one step. They think, if I do this, what happens immediately after? That's not nothing. One step ahead is better than no steps ahead, but it leaves you completely exposed to everything that comes after the immediate consequence. The second result, the third result, the way the situation looks 6 months from now when the initial excitement or urgency has faded and you're living inside what you chose. Pay attention to this. The person who takes a promotion because it pays more without thinking about the political environment they're stepping into, the manager whose trust they'll need to earn, the increased visibility that will make every mistake more costly. They thought one step ahead. They didn't see the 3 that followed. The person who ends a friendship dramatically after a falling out without thinking about the mutual connections, the professional circles that overlap, the version of events the other person will tell, the way their own reputation will be shaped by how they handled the exit. One step, not 3. The person who makes a financial decision based on how it feels right now, the immediate relief, the immediate reward, without calculating the compounding cost of what they traded away to get it. One step, not 3. Here's what most people never notice. The difference between a good decision and a bad one is almost never visible in the moment you make it. It's only visible in the steps that come after. And if you haven't thought that far, you're not actually making the decision. You're just starting a sequence you haven't finished reading. How emotions make people predictable. The surprising thing is that the biggest obstacle to strategic thinking is not intelligence. It's emotional state. When you're anxious, you move too fast toward resolution, toward certainty, toward anything that stops the feeling of uncertainty. When you're angry, you move toward confrontation, even when confrontation costs you more than the original offense. When you're flattered, you open up, you become generous, agreeable, less guarded than you would be otherwise. When you're afraid of missing out, you commit before you're ready. Every one of these emotional states creates a predictable behavior. And predictable behavior is something other people, consciously or not, learn to use. Think about someone in your life who always reacts the same way to criticism, who always shuts down, or always escalates, or always apologizes reflexively before they've thought about whether the criticism is even valid. You probably already know what to expect from them, which means you can, without trying, steer them by when you deliver feedback, how you frame a request, when you go quiet. Now ask yourself, what do the people around you know about your emotional patterns? What do they know triggers you, flatters you, makes you say yes when you'd otherwise say no? What sequences have they run on you often enough that they run them automatically now, without thinking about it? Most people have never asked this question. The dangerous part is that not asking doesn't mean it isn't happening. Why strategic people observe before acting? There's a moment in any new situation, a new job, a new relationship, a new social environment where most people immediately start performing, establishing who they are, what they're capable of, what position they want to occupy. They're so busy introducing themselves to the situation that they never actually read it. Strategic people do the opposite. They go quiet first. Not passive, they are fully present and fully attentive, but they hold their responses. They watch who responds to what, who aligns with whom, who talks the most and says the least, who stays quiet and moves things anyway. They let the room reveal itself before they decide where to stand in it. This changes everything. Because the information you collect in the first weeks of any new situation, before your presence has changed the dynamics, before people have performed for you, before the environment knows what it's dealing with, is the most accurate information you will ever have about that situation. Most people never get it. They were too busy performing to observe, and they spend the next year trying to navigate terrain they never properly mapped, anticipating second and third-order consequences. Here's the habit that separates people who stay ahead from everyone else. They don't just ask what happens next. They ask what happens after that, and then after that. It sounds simple. It almost never gets done. Think about it in a career context. You're considering leaving a job. The first-order consequence: you get out of an environment that's draining you. Immediate relief. That's the step most people see and act on. The second-order consequence: the gap in your resume, the professional relationships you leave behind. The fact that you're negotiating leverage for the next role depends on how you exit this one and what the people here say about you when they're called. The third-order consequence: the type of role you're likely to attract given how you left, the professional identity that forms around the narrative of this transition, the options you've opened or closed by the specific way you made this move. None of this means you shouldn't leave. Maybe you absolutely should. But the person who thought all three steps makes a fundamentally different exit than the person who only thought one, and arrives somewhere fundamentally better as a result. Pay attention to this pattern in your own past decisions. The ones that hurt you most, the friendships that ended badly, the opportunities that collapsed, the financial choices you're still correcting. How many of them were made on the first-order consequence alone? The immediate relief, the immediate reward, the immediate resolution. The cost of most mistakes is not the decision. It's the steps that came after that nobody looked at. How people reveal their future behavior. Here's what most people never notice. People tell you who they are before they show you. Not in words, in patterns. The way someone handles a small disappointment tells you exactly how they'll handle a large one. The way someone speaks about people who are no longer useful to them tells you what they'll say about you when you're in that position. The way someone behaves when they have very little power tells you more about their character than how they behave when they have a lot of it. Most people wait for the dramatic reveal, the moment someone finally shows their hand clearly. By then, the cost of not seeing it earlier is already paid. Strategic people don't wait for the dramatic moment. They read the small ones consistently, quietly, without making a production of it. They notice when someone's story about a situation changes slightly depending on who's in the room. They notice when someone's generosity only arrives when there's an audience. They notice when accountability is always, just barely, someone else's. These patterns don't lie. They are, if you're paying attention, an accurate preview of behavior you haven't witnessed yet. And if you can read the preview, you can make decisions that account for the full movie rather than just the scene you're currently in. Why keeping plans private protects your options. Most people announce their intentions, not from arrogance, from excitement, from the social need to share, from the unconscious belief that saying something aloud makes it more real. The problem is that announced intentions invite interference, not always deliberately, but the moment someone knows what you want, they can, without meaning to, shape the environment in ways that affect your access to it. They can introduce doubt by naming obstacles you hadn't considered. They can create premature expectations that add pressure to a process that needed space. They can, if they're less well-intentioned, move first precisely because they know where you're going. This changes everything about how you approach plans that genuinely matter. Keep the early stages private, not secretive as a posture, just quiet as a practice. Move first, announce after. Let the actions speak before the intentions do. The person who builds in silence and reveals through results operates in a fundamentally different environment than the person who narrates every step. The surprising thing is how much cleaner progress becomes when you remove the audience. Fewer people to manage expectations for. Fewer opinions arriving at the wrong stage. Fewer premature judgments forming around something that isn't finished yet. Silence used deliberately is not absence. It is space, and most worthwhile things need space to grow before they need an audience. How patience creates opportunities others never see. The most underrated strategic tool available to you costs nothing, and almost nobody uses it consistently. Patience. Not passive waiting, patient watching. The kind where you've identified something worth moving toward. You understand roughly when the right conditions will exist, and you resist the pressure to move before they do. Think about it. Most opportunities that get chased and lost would have arrived naturally to someone willing to wait. Most conflicts that escalated into permanent damage would have resolved themselves if given 2 more weeks of silence. Most decisions that were made under urgency, because the pressure felt real, were not actually urgent. The urgency was manufactured by circumstances or by other people, and you reacted to it as if it were yours. Strategic people develop an almost physical sensitivity to manufactured urgency. They notice when a deadline is designed to prevent thought rather than reflect a genuine constraint. They notice when pressure arrives at exactly the moment that most benefits the person applying it, and they move on their own timeline rather than the one being offered to them. Here's what most people never notice. The people who shape outcomes are rarely the ones who moved fastest. They're the ones who moved at the right moment, which, more often than not, was later than the situation was pressuring them to move. Practical habits for staying 3 steps ahead. This is where most content gives you a list that sounds useful and changes nothing. So instead of a list, one practice, the one that makes all the others possible. Before any significant decision, add 24 hours. Not because the decision will be different. Sometimes it won't be, but because 24 hours removes the emotional charge that the moment placed on the choice, and what remains is the actual decision rather than the pressured version of it. In that calmer state, the second and third order consequences become visible. The patterns in the people involved become visible. The manufactured urgency, if there was any, reveals itself. This single habit, applied consistently, will catch more mistakes, reveal more opportunity, and protect more options than any other practice you can adopt. Beyond that, build the habit of asking one more question than feels necessary. After you've understood what's happening, ask what it means. After you've understood what it means, ask what comes next. After you've understood what comes next, ask who benefits from you seeing it that way. That last question is the one most people never ask, and it is often the most important one. Here is the reality of where you are if none of this changes. The decisions being made around you by the people you work with, the people you're close to, the systems and incentives shaping your environment are already 3 steps ahead of where you're standing. Not because anyone is plotting against you, because strategic thinking is what people do when they understand that the present moment is not the game. The future is the game, and the future is built from today's small, mostly unexamined choices. If you keep reacting, if the present moment keeps pulling you forward without your full consent, if emotion keeps substituting for analysis, if urgency keeps arriving from outside rather than from your own considered timeline, then the future you end up in will be one other people's decisions built, and you will adapt to it, and it will feel like your life. The people who stay 3 steps ahead are not the ones who control everyone else. They are the ones who control themselves, who manage their emotional reactions, who observe before acting, who think past the immediate consequence into the ones that follow, who move on their own timeline rather than the one being offered to them. They are not operating in a different world than you. They are operating in the same world, with the same information, making choices that account for more of it. That is available to you, starting with the next decision you make, the one where you pause for 24 hours when the moment is pressuring you to move now, the one where you ask what happens after this and after that, the one where you watch before you act and move when the time is yours rather than theirs. The future belongs to the people who can see it before it arrives. Start seeing